Hello,
Welcome back to Invisible to the Eyes podcast. My name's Roselli.
and I'm Brandon.
Today's episode is Werewolf, the Monster Among Us.
Oh, continuing with the Halloween stuff, huh?
Of course. And since last episode we did vampires, we of course had to follow that up with werewolves. They're always connected for some reason. You've seen a lot of the movies out in nowadays with werewolves and vampires together or fighting amongst each other.
Yeah, I've seen those in a few movies. Oddly enough, I haven't even seen the Wolfman movie.
You haven't seen the Wolfman? Ugh, we're adding that to the list. That never ending list of movies you haven't seen.
Of course.
So, why is there such a connection? Have you ever wondered why they put vampires and werewolves together?
I haven't thought about it. I just thought they're monsters, so...
Well, they have a lot of similarities, and we're going to talk about some of them in this episode. But when you think of a werewolf, what do you think about?
I think of a man who shapeshifts into a wolf.
Yeah, and that's really close to what vampires do, right? Except vampires turn into bats.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's different is that it's like a half man and half wolf, right? And another similarity is that, they both seem to be cursed, right?
That's true.
They have superhuman powers.
And aren't werewolves afraid of the night as well?
No, they're afraid of the day, right? They only come at night.
Oh, they come out at night. That's right.
That's what you meant to say.
That's what I meant to say.
But yes, you're right about that for sure. And we're going to dive deeper into that later on too, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that we know about werewolves from, of course, the movies, where we learn all of our things, is that they turn into the werewolf with a full moon, right?
Yeah.
So all of these things kind of tie the werewolf with the vampire, in that they are both these mythical creatures, right? That scare us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, of course, Hollywood is going to jump on that and capitalize on that for sure. And I have no opposition to that. I love scary movies, so the more they make, the better.
Same here, and I like the jump scare type of movies as well.
Yes, that's true. But we're going to be talking a little bit more about where the stories actually come from, because with the vampire episode, I learned a lot about vampires and where these stories that we know today in movies and things like that, where they come from. And I was really surprised when I started doing the research for this particular episode that there was so much information about real life stories. I was not ready for that. I think I was expecting there to be less information. I was thinking I was going to have a harder time to find out more about werewolves because vampires are everywhere.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought there would be more stories about werewolves.
Yeah, I definitely thought, oh man, we're going to be struggling to find out enough information to make an episode on just the werewolves themselves. But we definitely had the opposite problem. I think we found out a lot of things that we want to share with you. Werewolf stories can be traced back to ancient Greeks and ancient Romans.
Wow, that far back?
Yeah, I was really surprised by that too. You can find a story about this woman who turned her ex-lover into a wolf in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Oof.
And that is really old. book.
Why did she do that?
She must have been really upset with him.
Makes sense.
Also, Herodotus, who is considered to be the father of history, wrote about something called the Nuri, who are people that turned into wolves several days out of the year. So it's not, I don't think it's with every full moon, because that would be like too much. But I think it just happened like every so often in the year, right? But I was really surprised to see those accounts so early on. I thought it was more of a modern tale, right?
So did I thought that was just a made-up story just within the past, 100 years or so?
Yeah, the first thing I think of when I think of a werewolf is not your typical answer, I think, because most people think of like the Hollywood movies or even like the Twilight sagas, all that. I think of like Little Red Riding Hood.
Oh, that's one I didn't think about either.
Yeah, I think that definitely was a werewolf story, and I think with good reason, people wanted the kids of that time to be afraid of wolves, because you don't want your kid running around in the woods late at night, right?
By themselves.
And that's one way to definitely keep them from getting into trouble. Scaring them.
Good to know.
Yeah. So also, Greek mythology talks about someone named Lycaon, who was a king who was visited by a god, Jupiter. And when Jupiter came down and visited him, he did not believe anyone that this was a god. And he tried to, like, I guess, pull a prank on him and gave him a meal that consisted of human meat.
That's messed up.
Yeah, and to do that to a god was definitely disrespectful. Jupiter's response to that was what you expected. He was really angry, and so he ended up turning Lycaon into a wolf.
Can't say I didn't see that coming.
So there are even traces of werewolves found in Viking stories. And this is a little bit different because in Viking stories, they would take the pelt of animals that they had killed and would wear them in order to gain that animal's power. So if you wanted to be, I don't know, like more brave or stronger, you would take that animal pelt and wear it.
Oh,
and you could like channel in that animal power.
Okay, that sounds dark, but it also sounds kind of cool as well.
I think that's very dark to me.
But still, imagine getting that animal's ability or power.
Just by wearing it.
That's the part that wouldn't be as fun.
So the word berserk actually comes from these types of tales. And that is because back then, for them in their language, it was bar sark, which literally translates to bear shirt.
Oh.
So it was pretty much saying that there was these men who were in bear shirts, like literally wearing a bear as a shirt.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're wearing like our wolf shirts, but that's not anywhere close to that.
No, nowhere near.
Are you feeling like a wolf?
Wolf?
I'm wearing my silver, so you need to stay away from me. Well, with these Viking stories, you see that they would wear different animals to gain extra strength. And that is why that word became what it is now. Like if someone goes berserk, like they just, I don't know, they just lose all control, right? And they're really vicious, and that's what you wanted in battle. If you're a Viking, that's exactly what you needed, right?
Just a killing machine that isn't thinking about anything else.
Yes.
Yeah, just about.
So that is how the Viking stories can be linked to like the werewolf stories, because I don't know, maybe there was a Viking out there wearing a wolf and somebody confused them for a werewolf.
Oh, that's true. So it might not be an actual werewolf, just somebody that looks like one.
Yeah, somebody that's wearing one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that I found really interesting when I was looking for more information about where we can actually pinpoint the start of these legends. Some of the most prominent stories of the werewolf actually trace back to the Middle Ages and the time of Reformation. This was a period of time that's very dark in history. There was a huge struggle from the Catholic Church to get rid of anybody who opposed it and its beliefs. And they were not going to stop at anything. So if you denounced the church, you would be in trouble. And that, of course, included a lot of people who were deemed to be witches and werewolves.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and if you think about that, like, anybody could have been a witch. Anybody could have been a werewolf. Just like we talked about in the previous episode, anybody could have been a vampire if you were dug up too early, right?
Oh, and the question is, did they need evidence, or is it just basically people saying, oh, hey, I think you're a witch, or I think you're a werewolf?
It was pretty much that. So in 1231, the courts were established for the Inquisition. And the Inquisition was, like I said, a period of time that is very dark. A lot of innocent people were murdered and tortured. And that is also around the time that I started to notice this term called lycanthropy. And yes, we go back to a little earlier when I mentioned Lycaon, that king that got turned into a wolf. Well, lycanthropy is derived from him, and it is going to play a role into those innocent people being accused of werewolf. So a lot of people were actually tortured into confessing that they were werewolves or whatever other type of being they were accused of, right?
That just sounds like a really dark and horrible time.
Yes, it does. And so that is why I'm going to hand this over to you, and you're going to tell us about one particular case of a werewolf, because I don't really like to talk about things like this.
So this story is about a man named Peter Stubb. In 1589, he was a German man who confessed to being a werewolf.
By torture,
Yep,
right?
by torture.
Yeah.
And he also said that he had a belt that gave him the ability to change into a werewolf, and that he'd grow, the teeth would grow in his mouth. He had a craving for human meat. He also said he had an intense hatred for humans and became stronger and more aggressive.
Wow.
I mean, I couldn't imagine the teeth just growing inside your mouth.
Yeah, like extra teeth just pushing out like all at once to make you into a wolf.
It's like you think that your wisdom teeth hurt. Imagine that.
Oh no, why'd you have to bring up the wisdom teeth?
And then just the fact that he has a hatred for humans, that just doesn't seem normal either. And yeah, like you said, he confessed all this in torture, and he was tortured in a horrible way. Pieces of his skin were literally pinched off of him using burning hot pinchers.
See, that's the part I don't like. I don't like to hear about what horrible things people were made to face. Like, for what reason? Because somebody accused him of being a werewolf?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that I don't like out there. I would never say that they're werewolves, though, if I knew that they were going to receive that kind of treatment.
No, I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anybody, because that had to have been painful as hell.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
And, of course, like we talked about, it's whether they were pointing fingers or not, there was no evidence of his transformations at all.
You mean they didn't find that belt?
No, they didn't find the belt.
Of course not, because, I mean, if you were tortured in a horrible way, you would just say anything to get out of it, right?
Anything to stop the pain, right?
So I'm not surprised that he said he had this belt and was growing teeth, extra teeth in his mouth, and all these crazy things. Like,
Yeah.
of course, like, he was being tortured, and I do not take that confession as anything other than him trying to just stop the pain. That sounds horrible.
Yeah. And so everybody just believed that he was just, he was insane and mentally ill.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think we can go back to that word I mentioned, right? Lycanthropy.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what that is?
It's an actual medical condition in which people truly believe that they can transform into other animals.
That sounds so scary to me, even scarier than any vampire out there. The fact that somebody is so ill that they truly believe that they have these abilities and like they just go on killing sprees. Oh man, like that is just like serial killer type stuff.
That's absolutely terrifying. I don't even want to imagine what's going on in that person's mind.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that they truly realize what horrible things they could be out there doing.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, it sucks that they're, just saying he's a werewolf without any evidence of transformation at all.
Yeah, I think that was really awful thing to do. And he of course was not the only one. He was just one that definitely stood out to us. And we found a lot of different accounts of his story, right? And in some accounts, like they would say like he confessed to this and that, and it's like, yes, but the way that he confessed and in the state of mind that he must have been during that time, I just don't think that anybody could take his confession seriously.
No, I definitely don't think they could.
I just think that was like you said, he was just mentally ill and he needed help, but I don't think that he turned into a wolf.
No, I definitely don't either.
So as we mentioned, lycanthropy could be a possible explanation as to why people thought there were werewolves at the time, right?
Yeah.
But there are other explanations for that as well. One of them is called hypertrichosis.
What's that?
It's a condition where people just grow hair excessively, like all over their body. So that means like their face could be covered in hair, and Yeah, I was kind of thinking of your beard, but I think in hypertrichosis cases, it's like that, but just everywhere.
Just all over your body.
Yeah, and when people don't understand a certain thing, of course it's going to be scary, right?
Yeah, I would not want that type of condition.
Yeah. And another thing is, like we mentioned as well, mental illness and rabies. Because, I mean, you think about rabies now, we know a lot about it, right? And we take our dogs to get their rabies vaccines and, keep them safe and keep us safe as well. But when you get, injured by an animal that is ravenous, like you do foam at the mouth and you're just not thinking clearly.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Yeah. Another thing that you actually mentioned in the previous episode where we talked about vampires is porphyria.
Yeah, that was when they were sensitive to light.
And that's when you mentioned that they only come out at night. That's what I thought of as well. It's the porphyria. That's definitely an explanation for that. That's why they don't come out during the daytime, right? They're very sensitive to that.
Yep, just like the vampires.
Yeah, and see, we continue to find more and more commonalities between the two.
Hopefully they don't hate garlic too.
I don't think so. I don't think I found anything about werewolves not being able to eat garlic.
Oh, good.
What do you mean good? You're starting to look more and more like a werewolf to me.
Don't make fun of my beard.
So those are some explanations, but one explanation that also links the werewolf to another shapeshifter is something called, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this, ergot?
Ergo, I think it is.
Ergo?
So it sounds about right. Ergo.
So this is a fungus that affects the human brain. Now, the reason why I said that this would tie werewolves in with other shapeshifters is because we find ergo in the witch trials. And witches are said to have that ability to shapeshift, right?
Yeah.
They can turn into all kinds of different animals and, I think even different people too.
Oh, that's weird.
So, the witches connection in 1976, actually, Linda Caporeal provided evidence that pointed out the presence of fungus in rye during the time of the Salem witch trials.
So they got that from bread? Really?
Yes. So it's a fungus that grows in the rye. And of course, rye bread was very prominent in everybody's diet at that time. And because the food was contaminated, people were eating it and they were, showing symptoms of this illness that causes hallucination, convulsive disorder, vomiting, delusions, and even a sensation of like crawling in your skin.
Oh, every single symptom sounds awful. And you know how I am about throwing up.
Yes. And so now you can imagine like why all these people thought they were being cursed, or, the witches were taking over their bodies.
Especially back then when, stuff like that wasn't really as known.
Right. Yeah, of course they're not going to think anything of like the bread that they're eating, right? It's their food. Well, it turns out that around the time of the werewolf sightings, people were consuming rye bread as well as a very regular meal, right? And there was an increase of murders at the time. And same with the witch trials. Werewolves were also tortured into confessions that could have all linked them to this particular contaminated food.
Oh, back to the torturing again, huh?
Yeah, I mean, witches suffered through that as well.
What they went through like the burning and stuff like that.
That was what was believed to, I guess, be effective form of getting rid of a werewolf or, yeah, like a witch. It was like a very common thing for people to just burn others. I don't know why.
That sounds awful. I would not want to be alive through that.
Yeah, it does. So that is why I think that there's a huge link between the werewolf and the witches and also vampires as well.
I can definitely see the similarities between the two.
So just like anybody could be a werewolf, anybody could be a witch, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays, like, I don't think being a witch is all that bad.
No, I don't. In this day and age, it's not really a bad thing.
I don't know about werewolf, though.
Yeah, I don't think it would be acceptable to just start eating people.
So, now imagine people eating this contaminated rye bread, and that combined with the mental illness.
Oh, I can see how that could be a problem.
Yes, a very big problem. And a problem that at the time they didn't really look for much more explanation other than, this person is walking on all fours, howling at everyone or, attacking everyone, things like that.
I think it goes back to a knowledge thing. Like, if you have no knowledge of any of this, or if you have less experience about it, you're not going to know how to deal with it.
Yeah. And also, if you're growing up as a kid with all these stories about these crazy, scary wolves, right? What are you going to tend to do? You're going to tend to, I guess, connect those stories and see that person who's having a mental emergency just as a monster, right? And associating that with the scary things. Wolves are really scary.
Wolves are very scary. I would not want to run into one.
Yeah, and I think that dogs being a descendant of wolves, we definitely can see how scary dogs can be, right? If they're not in the right hands. I think the owners have a lot to do with that.
Oh, because our dogs are so scary.
I have walked my dog and people just will not want to come anywhere near him. And he is like the biggest teddy bear, but it's because of the way that he looks. He does look scary.
Yeah. And the way people perceive him.
Yeah, but now I think if he was like feral, definitely scary, right?
Just growling at every little thing.
And I think that's what werewolves, that's what wolves are. Now that we've gotten a better understanding of where the werewolf stories might have originated from, I think we can conclude that werewolves aren't really like they show us in the movies, don't you think?
Definitely not.
I don't think that they really hated Silver, right?
Not that I've seen in any of the movies recently.
And I don't think that they really followed a strictly transformation of themselves into a wolf just with the moonlight, right? Or with the full moon.
No, apparently it was one of them had a belt.
Yeah, see, there you go. So I think that Hollywood is responsible for the tie of the werewolf to vampires. I think they saw how popular Dracula was as a novel, and then when they made it into a movie, and they wanted to do the same with the werewolf, but somehow they fell short.
I guess I wouldn't know because I didn't see the movie.
I was just gonna say that you haven't even seen the movie. Well, in 1949, the movie The Wolfman came out, and it's by Universal Studios, and you saw the Wolfman in the haunted mazes that we went to.
I did, and I had no idea what was going on.
It's a classic. How can you not have seen it? We need to change that ASAP.
We definitely do.
So, yes, the movies didn't depict the transformation of the man into a werewolf because of, at the time, in 1949, horror movies were afraid of censorship.
Were they?
Mm-hmm. They didn't want to not be popular. They wanted everybody to go see that movie, and they didn't want to be censored because of the transformation, because it closely resembled very, I guess, like, controversial topics.
I had no idea that they thought like that.
I didn't either, but I guess at the time they thought that it was going to be really insensitive in the way that it portrayed, like, man turning into something, and would challenge, like, people that were still on the fence about the theory of evolution and Darwinism.
You think it had something to do with religion as well?
Well, yeah, because the people that mainly oppose the theory of evolution and Darwin's theory, it's because of religion.
Yeah.
Because how can man come from an ape, right?
That's true.
But I think also a lot of the things that we know about werewolves coming from Hollywood, they did have to look at the time, right? They had to figure out their audience to make sure that they weren't going to be offending anyone. So, I don't know.
That had to have been tough, too. Like, that has to be a really tough job to try to figure out your audience and figure out whether, you're going to offend anybody.
Yeah. So, they didn't add that scene to the Wolfman. And I personally think that if they had added that transformation, that's what people wanted to see, right? They wanted to see the actual process happening. Like, how are they going to turn this man into a wolf? And I think that would have added so much more to the movie. Nevertheless, the movie is great. We're going to watch it.
Yeah, because the transformation sounds like it'd be one of the most interesting parts.
Yeah. Later on, you see it in other movies. One of my favorite movies involving werewolves is American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah, you did show me that, finally.
And wasn't it good?
It was good.
And even, like, them showing how painful of a transformation it would be, like, I think that added so much more to that movie.
And it was so creepy, too.
I think they did an amazing job for it being an 80s movie. To this day, it's still great. And super scary.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive.
So, yeah, the death by silver comes from Hollywood, as well as, the mark of the pentagram on the hand of the next victim. And, if you get bit by a werewolf, you turn into a werewolf. I think if a werewolf is after you, I don't think you're going to tell anybody about it because you're not going to get to.
I think I've heard of the being bit by a werewolf and turning into one. I didn't know about the pentagram on the next victim.
Yeah, apparently it shows up on, like, the hand of the next victim or something like that, signaling that they're going to be next.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not next.
Also, there was a rise in popularity of werewolf stuff after, of course, Wolfman in 49. We also saw comics with the depiction of werewolves, such as 1972 Werewolf by Night.
I haven't heard of that one.
What? It's a Marvel.
I don't read comics that much.
I think that they should make a movie about Werewolf by Night and just have that be the next Marvel movie. I think that'd be awesome.
They could have it. I mean, they could have that. They do stuff like that outside of the cinematic universe. They could just have it be its own standalone.
Yeah, and bring more popularity to that genre, right? I think we've gotten so many vampire movies. I have nothing against that, but I don't think that the werewolf gets as much attention.
And I feel like it would be a more original spin on a werewolf, too.
I'm honestly a lot more scared than vampires of werewolves.
I agree.
And I think we're going to get into why in a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about the connection of werewolves and the moon. And the reason I want to do that is because this will explain a little bit more why I think werewolves are scarier than vampires. So, the word lunatic. What do you think of?
I think of crazy person.
Yeah, someone going berserk.
Mental.
Right?
Yeah.
Since we talked about that word earlier in this episode. Yeah, so someone who is they just lost it, right? The word lunatic is derived from the Latin word for moon, which is luna.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
And so there is this connection, right, between like crazy things happening during a full moon. Like, why is that? Do you think that it's just a coincidence, or do you think that there's something else there to it?
Like, does the moon actually make people crazy?
Yeah, people that work in like emergency rooms or 911 dispatchers have said that there is an increase of activity during full moons.
Oh, man, that's weird.
Isn't it? Yeah, is it just a coincidence that there are more emergency calls made out during nights with full moon? I don't know.
I feel like you could hardly call that a coincidence.
I think that maybe it's just the way that we're thinking that there's a full moon and we know that we should expect some crazy stuff to happen. Could that be why more crazy things happen? Because we're expecting them?
It could be, but I mean, if they have numbers that support that there's more stuff happening, then it's kind of hard to argue with that.
I think so. And as always, we're going to be linking down all the information that we got for this episode and some of the statistics that we found about these things down in the description of the video. There was an article by Live Science that we looked at, and we also looked at this really interesting video by, was it the History Channel?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it talks about like the legends of the werewolf. We're going to link that down in the description as well. But it's really interesting that there are these spikes of activity, crazy things that happen during full moons. I believe that some of the forces that come from the moon, we still don't understand. Because, yeah, there's the connection of the moon and the gravitational pull of the moon that causes high tides and things like that we understand. But I think that certain connections we have yet to explore. And I'd be curious if that's something that you would like to find out more about. If you're watching or listening to this, let us know if you like us to do a future episode on the moon. There's definitely some crazy theories out there, and it'd be a topic that I would like to dive deeper into. But for now, we can conclude that full moon equals lunatics.
Yep.
So I think that's why there is that connection of like people turning into werewolves when there's a full moon.
Because they turn into lunatics.
Yeah, they go crazy. And they just go on this killing spree. And that, to me, is the craziest thing.
Well, and those people, maybe they're considered werewolves because they're hairy, too, and they go insane.
Because they're hairy.
It's part of the description, right?
Yeah, that is true. Rough hands, too, because your hands are... you're growing hair on your hands, and so because you shave them, you have rough hands. And
Okay, I'm guilty of that one.
I know. The more we talk about werewolves, the more and more I'm convinced that you might be one.
Oh, no. But I'm okay in the moonlight, I think.
I don't think that we could do an episode on werewolves and not at least mention Skinwalker Ranch.
What's that?
It's a ranch with lots of paranormal activity. People have accounts of seeing UFOs, cattle mutilations, and also shapeshifters who are impervious to bullets.
Ooh, that sounds like a fun place to go to.
Maybe you can go. I don't think I want to see any shapeshifters.
Almost sounds like another Area 51.
I think with more activity though, because there are tales of the shapeshifters that can, be traced back to a long time ago from this particular area of the country.
Really?
So if you want to go and visit it, record it and let me know how it goes.
Let you know how it goes. That's if I even make it out of there.
Yeah, so this ranch is notorious for seeing shapeshifters. And I remember a story about one of my uncles who my grandma was telling him not to go out that night. And he went out to the bars anyway, right? And then it was pretty late at night and he was like coming home, walking in the middle of the night after, having a few drinks. Maybe a few more drinks than he should have had. And he said that there was this dog in front of him, a black dog. And the closer and closer he got to this dog, the bigger the dog got. And so he just came to a stop and was looking at this black dog growing in size to the point where he was like the size of a human.
Oh, no.
I don't think that he stayed there for the full transformation because, I don't blame him. He definitely got scared. And when he got home, of course, he got scolded by my grandma and told her the story. And she was not surprised about that. But she was saying that it was like the personification of the devil.
Oh.
But
that's not where I thought I was going to go. I thought I was going to say what? I thought she was going to say it's because you drank too much.
No, my grandma was very superstitious. And like I mentioned in our first episode about ghost stories, she used to tell me all kinds of stories like this. So I think maybe that's why I really like all the horror films.
I can't even imagine being in the presence of a transformation like that. I'd have booked it right away.
Yeah. And now we can look at that and say like, well, maybe he did have one too many drinks. But could there be people out there that could change shapes?
It could.
There are a lot of people out there that believe that this really happens.
It And it could. We just might not be something that we know about.
I think part of me thinks that it could happen, and that's why I do not want to go to this ranch.
I mean, I was kidding. I'd probably be chicken anyway.
So there is this fear that we have of the animal that's within us, right?
Do I?
Like I said, I'm wearing my silver. I think I'm good.
Okay, you're good.
But yes, we can trace back this fear to when civilizations first arose. I mean, if we do believe in the fact that we came from animals, we're still animals. We are still Homo sapiens, which are a classification of animals. And I think that we still have some of those instincts of animals, right? Like, we want to have kids, right? Reproduction. That's a huge animal characteristic. You want to pass down your genes into like the next generation, right? Yeah. So I think that that is what makes us so afraid of of turning into an animal again, I guess. It just makes us fear the wild because, we're not used to that anymore. We have rules and regulations and certain way that we need to behave and treat each other.
Yeah, because isn't another example of that eating meat?
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. So, like the pancreas, right? It definitely had a purpose back in the day. Consuming raw meat was dangerous, and so the pancreas would help in our bodies processing that meal. Not all the meals were cooked all the time, so nowadays we don't really use our pancreas for much.
Yeah, and eating raw meat just sounds awful.
Yeah. Just eating meat in general for me, it's like, no, thank you. But I know that a lot of people don't feel that way.
Yeah.
And, that's perfectly fine. It's just showing us that, we still have that animal inside, right? And I think, honestly, humans are capable of horrific things. And that is why werewolves are extremely scary to me, because I honestly believe that what we think of a werewolf, it's a human in the end, right?
That's true, now that you mention it.
And that is just so much more real than any other monster out there that we can come up with.
Yeah.
Because for all I know, I'm sitting right next to a werewolf right now.
Yes, you could.
That pretty much sums everything up that we were able to find. We went on a few tangents that I guess opened up different doors for me to brainstorm future episodes. We talked a little bit about Skinwalker Ranch, and I do want to learn more about that, as well as like the moon. I want to learn a lot about the moon as well. And I think there was something else, but I can't remember.
Yeah, we definitely learned a lot, and I learned that I probably don't want to go to Skinwalker Ranch.
So you changed your mind?
Yeah, I backtracked a bit.
What happened? I thought you were a werewolf and you're not scared.
I don't want to meet any aliens possibly there, so...
Okay. Well, we hope that you enjoyed this episode and have been enjoying the whole Halloween trend that we've been having for the past few episodes.
Yeah, we've definitely had a lot of fun researching all this, and yeah, we hope you like everything.
And also, I did give a hint as to what the next episode is going to be. Maybe you picked up on it, maybe not. But we do have a very special thing planned because our next episode should be up on Halloween.
Yep. Should be up on Halloween.
So that's something to keep an eye out for that. Make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell so that you know when that episode comes out. It's going to be a good one for sure.
Yeah, and let us know what you guys think of werewolves. I mean, do you think werewolves exist?
Do you think you might be a werewolf?
Well, apparently you think I might.
You got the beard going, so that's why.
Stupid beard.
So yeah, thank you for listening and tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. And remember
to look beyond what you see.
Bye.
See you guys next.
Special thanks to my mom for the wonderful shirts that we're wearing on this episode. She got them from Mexico.
Yeah, thank you, Lena.
Bye.
Bye.